today we are here having a conversation with a good friend of mine coming from Trinidad and Tobago. We haven't seen each other face to face in person in a long time, but it's a pleasure to have him on the channel for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, KW. Welcome.
Greetings all. Ulysses, thanks for having me on. I'm KW. I'm from the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the Southern Caribbean. We are known as the jewel or the pendant of the chain of islands. And I live with sickle cell disorder, specifically genotype SC. And I've been fortunate to live more than 5 decades, I almost said 50 decades. That would be so true. But I've lived over 5 decades, and I consider it an opportunity now to share, because I'll tell you this, a secret about me is that if anyone does not like to speak about this condition, I stand accused.
So, how old were you when you were diagnosed with sickle cell?
I was diagnosed based on my parents' recall at 9 years old by an amazing doctor called Dr. Harold Nunes, who's still practicing. He's probably 85 or thereabout. And one of the things that I remember specifically, because that guided my parents for the next 10 years of my care, he said to them, sickle cell, and your treatment is folic acid and nutrition. Now, I never knew what that meant in the past, but my parents certainly made sure that I lived that mantra. And if Ulysses asks, I'll give some more information on what that actually means.
Okay, so how old are you today?
How old am I today? Well, I like to ask people, how old do I look, Ulysses? Give me a sense of how old I look to you.
It's hard to say, but I'll say, based on the fact that you already said you have 5 decades, I'll say that you probably maybe 57.
Well, I'm closing off my 64th year.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's a real pleasure being able to be here. 6 decades, and I thought that was a big deal until I met some golden warriors. I call myself a trooper. So more than anything else, I really believe we need to have the scripts that describe us positively. But I've met persons 70, 80, and there's one person who reported last year, her auntie is 91 years old. The reason why I'm stressing this is that we've been told a lot of different messages about how long we're gonna live or not live. But understand, if this person is 91 years old, they didn't have Endari or hydroxyurea or even folic acid. So my question is, what did they do? And in spite of their quality of life, to sustain life living with this condition. So thanks for the question, Ulysses.
All right. So I was growing up for you, like when you were like in your elementary years, going to school, your interaction with people living with this disease. How was that for you growing up?
In what specific area? Generally?
Like in general, like were you sick often? Do you used to go to the hospital?
Of course.
Like what was your interaction with your peers at the age, let's say from 9 to 18 years old?
Let me say this. There are people who found out I live with sickle cell, family members 6 years ago. Okay. They knew my parents before I was born. And they never knew. The irony is that one of my elder cousins ran a sickle cell organization in California.
Wow.
And when he found out 6 years ago, he was already out of the organization. He said, but KW, now? And his surprise was that his first cousin is my pops. And that information, they always knew I was ill, but they never knew why. That showed me what my interaction was, even when I was responsible for my life. I had several episodes of in and out of hospital experiences. One main one is having meningitis at age 12, and that still influences my hearing today at this age. And I discovered about probably 10 or 15 years ago while sitting in a clinic awaiting service that meningitis can affect your hearing. Meningitis is also one of those viral infections that people with sickle cell can be predisposed to as children. And it gave me a sense of, okay, now I understand what is causing this, because I'm not into diving or anything like that. So if anybody has ever experienced meningitis, you may want to consider, taking care of your hearing, ensuring that, if there's any hearing loss, you can manage it early in life. That's just one aspect. So, and then they're friends of mine from primary school.
So I need to bring you back to the question. So how was it for you growing up living with the disease? So your answer is basically there's people that didn't know that you had sickle cell until 6 years ago.
Right.
So why didn't disclose that information?
So now this is what I'm leading to. So in primary school or secondary school, consistent or continuous hospitalization, illness, missing school, whatever have you. And one of my experiences, probably around 14 years old, I was going on a trip, and my parents told the leader of the group, must have told him sickle cell disease. By the time the leader of the group came back to the larger gathering of us, I was living with lupus and I could not lift a table. Everything was too heavy for me to, this is how they describe it. So I said, you know what? I'm not gonna be sharing this information with anyone, because clearly there's a lot of misunderstanding. I'm saying these words now, but back then, I didn't want people to think that I was a weakling or anything like that. Because the impression that was given to my peers was that I was this person who was sick all the time. I mean, I was. I was always, in and out of hospitals and so on. But it gave me a sense of determining my own future and develop a sense of I can do it as well. So I began, without physically doing it, compare myself to my peers and trying to do what they did. Now mind you, this is after being diagnosed, the first 6 years or so after that, I wasn't allowed to go to camps and all those things that my siblings were allowed to go to. So consider now that I am probably 17, 18, 19, 20, I'm hiking in cold areas, I'm going to temperate countries when I get a crisis. So my body was forced to teach me how to treat itself. And this is all an introspection. So I went through phases of not saying anything, managing, understanding, and then about 10 years ago, to sharing like I'm doing today. If I'd met Ulysse 10 years ago, this would never happen. I will never be speaking to anyone about this, especially not knowing where this video is gonna go. Simply because of the connotations of the implications that people would attach to living with sickle cell. There's several misunderstandings, but what I find is that if you're able to quietly listen to yourself, listen to your body, and you have the explanations, and those people who are around you are able to now, okay, I may not fully understand, but I get what you're doing currently. And so that's been my life has been a transition. I like to say at times, risky, meaning that few things kept me back. So in a nutshell, that's how my life has been, from being worried about what people would think, or understanding that they really don't understand, so I did not share with them, to knowing that I have to now take over for what my parents did. They were hardcore nutritionists with me. One of the main things I did, I'm going to share this openly, I would say forced. I was forced to use raw chicken organs. Understanding a couple of years ago that my friend Tamika Morley shared with me that chicken organs has a higher quality of protein than the regular parts that we eat. Also, there's a high level of coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is an antioxidant found in our high-performing organs. So my parents intuitively knew what they were doing, and I thank God for them. They both transitioned off of it now, but out their care, they will know me. Okay. That's a really good question. I hope I did justice there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Next question I have for you: how was relationship with you? Like, we're talking about like loving interest, like, you know, where you are, you know, I don't know if you're married, if you have kids, like, you know, how was that for you?
So your first question, how relationships were, I wasn't revealing it. Actually, when I joined, there's an organization called SISBD in Trinidad Tobago, started by Dr. William Patricia Charles, Althea Jones, a host of parents in the back. It's for over 40 years old. I'm saying that because when I joined that organization, I understood the importance of sharing. And all the people who I would have dated that I still know, I call them and I apologize for that. And most of them were very happy to hear. One person who I never dated but took care of me, this is a big one, took care of me when I was one of my really bad episodes. She called me ungrateful because I never shared with her then what was wrong with me. And even at the hospital she took me to, but we were able to sit on her island and chat for about an hour, maybe about 15 years ago. She's still my friend, but she'll never forgive me for putting her through all that. How did I, when did I, and why did I reveal my status to the persons I dated? Most times I didn't. Most times I would say I live with cramps or something of the sort. However, when I found out how the condition can be transmitted, I have a son who is in his early 40s, and I had to suggest his mom that she be screened. I'm not sure how it all went, but he is not full blown, which means his mother doesn't live with the condition. Okay. I mentioned earlier that I apologize to people who I have dated in the past, and they found out what caused those painful days and nights when I told them there's nothing you can do for me, or when I would go for emergency care on my own, even if they would be close by, and not explain what it was. The point really should be made that until we can explain to ourselves what we're living with, not just knowing that we live with something, to explain what is happening, then it's difficult to explain to anyone else. So I will encourage us, try to answer that question early in life. Because if you say to someone, I live with sickle cell, and ask you, what does that mean? It can be frustrating, especially if things, for me, every 10 years, my body's response to this condition changes. So I've had 6 major changes in my life. Currently, I'm dealing with dental, hearing, chronic fatigue. And chronic fatigue is a term that came to me via David Owe, one of my friends out of Nigeria, you know, serving in Saudi Arabia as a medical doctor. But we can only talk about these things because we've lived them. I have not read research, so I want us to trust our lived experiences. A social person in our community that allows you to listen, to almost listen to yourself speak. Tonight, and I had some of those experiences. When you can explain to yourself what is happening, then you can share. But in addition to that, I have discovered, not been told, not read, I have discovered that the best way for persons to learn about these conditions who are around you is to be around you and be allowed to immerse in your episodes and your recovery, because they can then see for themselves and the conversation has a bit more fluidity. It makes more sense to them. They'll understand while after being discharged from hospital, maybe after a 1 day, 2 days or 2 weeks stay, you will then take a long drive and drop someone in the middle of winter, an hour and a half away, because you can do it. These are things that nobody understands because our body teaches us how to do those things. I hope that answers the question.
One thing I'd like to know is that why there's a need for us to hide the fact that we have this condition.
I think I dealt with that. For me, it meant that I could not explain what is happening to me. That's what I've discovered. And now that, so This January, I journeyed to one of our islands. My friend lives there. She's known me for maybe 20, 25, 30 years. No, she's known me for 30 years at least. My son was 9 when I met her. And so we chatting, we were out having fun, and I said, listen, let me share with you our sickle cell. She knew I lived with it, but didn't have all the details. I share with her what happens when we exert ourselves, that being annoyed can put you into an episode. Being happy could put you into an episode. And the day after, I went into an episode at her home. So now she was more prepared because she got it theory the day before. No, I didn't plan the practical, but it happened. I did a 1 hour uphill walk to her home, and of course that led me into dehydration. I generally do not drink tap water anywhere in the world, but there was no other option, so I decided not to have any water at all. That was a mistake. I should have had some form of liquid, even if it's water that I didn't really want to drink. I had taken pain meds out. I decided to space them out. So that one person had history, then theory on that day, and the following day she was dealing with me recovering from an episode. And she is now more understanding today than before. So even if I do something and she thinks that is different to what I've shared, she will know that I've said so. My body deals with this stuff as it presents. There's a general way of dealing with it, but each episode is different. And people are now able to say, okay, right, I'll have to work at what you prefer rather than telling you what to do.
If there's an advice you could give your younger self, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you tell your younger self?
Speak up earlier. I could have saved some lives, or maybe made some lives easier. And that question makes me emotional because I can think about 2 people right now that would have been maybe, I don't know, a different journey. One of my friends, who I knew when I was 16 years old, her daughter died. We were both in our 50s. I met, less than 10 years ago. When I met her, each time I meet her, I apologize. She said, but it's not your fault, KW. I said, but if I had any inclination, I shared with you what I was doing. Because she's like 5 streets away, not even 10 minutes walk. And her daughter died from whatever she died from, but she was sickle cell. She lived with sickle cell, had major complications, and I'm living 5 streets away, living with the same condition, older than her. I've had a decent life, and because I never shared, her mother never had a reference. So speak up earlier and join communities earlier, and expect to live long. More importantly, expect to live healthy. Please let your brain talk to your body that you can live. We are references. I mentioned that people 30 years old and me living with this condition. But more important, live quality life. Research named Wayne A.I. Frederick. He is the past president of Howard University, and is also a cancer surgeon. But when it comes to sickle cell world, listen to what he has done. In 1 year, he ran 12 5Ks, living with sickle cell SS. That's the reason I'm mentioning his name. Research Candice Heather. She is a performer. She toured the world with some of the top musicians, and dancing, taking her craft wherever she wants to go. We need to find references of persons who are living, more importantly, living well. And the only way we can do it is if we associate in our community, speak up. Once you learn about yourself, share. Please share. I'm doing this evening because Willis has suggested, but I do it freely. Everywhere I go, in spite of how the conversation goes, I speak of sickle cell. But mind you, in Trinidad Tobago, we have 4 different disorders. I just want to make a point here. We have hemophilia, thalassemia, von Willebrand, and sickle cell disease. So, I prefer sickle cell disorder because disease to me means you can infect someone. So I live with sickle cell disorder. The fortunate thing about this organization is that we umbrella 4 different IBDs. And therefore your knowledge of inherited blood disorders generally expand. So in answer to the question again, sir, speak up sooner, associate, decide to live healthy, and find out how to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it. All right. Look
I'm happy.
forward to see you again soon.
Thanks for taking the time to. This is not an interview; it's a conversation because we should record the earlier conversation. But you is an example of someone who practices what we preach, and that's something that's difficult for us because what I can say this openly. Nutrition has been my benchmark for my health. I support all the persons who are doing research, medicines and so on. But I'm saying to you guys, until we have full access, see how nourishing yourself can support self to create a better life. Have a really good one. Take care.
Thank you.